Hello. So this is our third attempt at starting, so I hope it's all going okay and you can hear me this time. My name is Hannah Darrigan. Yay, Abby. Hello. I'm just showing Lucy where it appears on the screen so we can follow along what you're saying. My name is Hannah Darrigan. I am a volunteer with the East Cornwall and West Devon Organising Network for Crohn's and Colitis UK, and this is our bi-monthly live. And this bi-month, I am joined by Lucy Pritchard, from the specialist IBD dietitian from Darraford Hospital, and she's going to talk to us about all things to do with diet and IBD and answer loads of questions. We've had quite a few questions come in advance, but we would love to hear any questions you might have as well. Yeah, I'm so pleased, Rhiannon. Thank you for letting me know. The first reaction is always the hardest, so please give us a wave. If you hit the wave button, if you're watching on a phone, we can all see you. There we go. Thank you very much. And we also have in the background, we have Danny, Margaret, and Shaz. You can hear them all too. I know, it's amazing. So we're going to start with the first question for Lucy, which is actually my question because I'm on the panel, so I get to choose. So when I was diagnosed in 2004, I had some really, really bad interactions with dietitians, admittedly not specialist dietitians, and it kind of like, before I saw you 2 years ago, that kind of like made me feel quite bad, and I do think dietitians have quite a bad name amongst IBD people. Can you talk to me about why you're a bit different, or very different actually, and why people should open up their minds a little bit to dietitians and diet with IBD?
Okay, so thank you very much. It's great to hear. I guess the difference is that you've seen a specialist, so the specialist has longer in training and works with the MDT, so it's a bit like...
So what's MDT?
So MDT is...
Oh, NDT, sorry.
M.
It is M,
it is
sorry.
M, you're right, yeah. So
I'll have a look up at why.
The multidisciplinary team is crucial because I get to go to meetings with Kathy and all of the gastroenterologists who are attached to the NDT.
Okay.
And cool. I get to know from the inside out patients' medical histories, their backgrounds, the treatments they're on, and most importantly, what's planned. So I get inside knowledge, which is brilliant. And then a couple of times a week, I get to do clinics and meet loads of patients. So you build up specialist skills and knowledge about what it's like to live with a condition and how to manage and assess and troubleshoot, which I guess the less experienced dietitians would have.
Generalists. And I think, yes. I mean, my experience was, you know, I was 6 stone, you know, I'm not naturally 6 stone, and they kind of came in and were like, it was obviously a generalist dietitian, they gave me general diet advice, they were going, oh yeah, you need to eat more vegetables, you need to eat more roughage, and all this kind of thing, and I was like, that's exactly the opposite of what the consultant's telling me, and I think it can be quite a confusing time, and I think one of those, I don't know if it still is the case, that when you first get diagnosed, you usually get to see a dietitian. Is that still the case, or?
It's our goal to work towards that. At the moment, I'm half-time in post as specialist, and so we'll try and triage the patients that are newly diagnosed and maybe struggling with 1 or 2 things, or whether it be weight, or they're trying to get their head around what they can and can't eat. In time, I would hope that the post does expand so that we can see absolutely anyone. One of our standards is, however, to try and see all of our inpatients that come into hospital who are quite vulnerable to weight loss. Yeah. In terms of outpatients, my goal is to try and keep people out of hospital. Yeah, exactly. So that's the main focus, and over time, maybe that will develop a bit more.
And I mean, we have got some questions coming up about dieting and losing weight and gaining weight and all those other kind of side effects of IBD. So I think we're going to come to that later. Hi Trudy, who's just joined, and all those other people that have just joined. Please remember, just come in and type a little, if you're on your phone, that's type on your phone. Please come say hi. My experience of you is like, I had like a blood test, and you kind of like broke down all the areas of like vitamins where I needed to, like bits of my diet I needed to have more or less of, and I found it really illuminating to understand that kind of side of how diet is important. So I really enjoyed that.
It's complicated because nutritional assessment, we all know height, weight, BMI, but really that's scratching the surface. And this condition, particularly Crohn's disease, is a condition which really does affect our nutritional status. We can lose weight really quickly, and that compromises our body composition and also the vitamin and minerals in our blood, which can have effects therefore on other systems like our bones as well. So we really need to take more of a holistic view, managing the condition and being aware of some of the issues which may be a bit hidden beneath the surface. So yeah, that's, I guess, what's a bit different.
Thank you. What's our next question, please?
Do you have any advice on diet for people with stomas, especially ensuring you're getting the right nutrients?
So just for people that might not know what a stoma is, where part of your, this is me, I should probably say at this point that I have no medical knowledge, I'm just a sufferer of Crohn's disease. So this is a lay person's view, where part of your small bowel has been brought to the surface to collect your poo in a bag, and you change your bag. That's me pointing to my bag, which I don't have. I don't have a bag, but if I did, it would be that. So what advice would you give to someone?
Yeah, okay, so broadly speaking, we've got two types of stoma. We've got ileostomy from the small intestine, and then we might also have, or we might have a colostomy, which comes from the large intestine.
Oh, okay, so it can be either.
Yeah, I guess the main message is that you don't have to avoid anything in particular, but that the diet needs to be a bit tailored. And the dietary advice that we give to someone with a new stoma might be sort of take things a bit more gently to begin with. Maybe start with soft foods, maybe peel your fruit, and maybe cook your vegetables for a bit longer. So it's easier to digest and easier to absorb. Those would be the key points. I guess one of the risks with any type of stoma is that people can get dehydrated pretty quickly.
Oh, really?
And that's because simply you're losing that fluid. And that's more of an issue for those with a stoma higher up. That's a stoma from the small intestine or an ileostomy. We can lose water, we can lose salts, and particularly in hot weather, or if we have an infection, that can drive the output. It's all about eating foods which are easy to digest to begin with and finding your own feet with foods. And it might be just being a little bit careful with fibre and also being careful with things like fruit juice, which are loaded with sugar and can disrupt and affect our outputs.
Oh, right, okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay, yeah, so Rhiannon's just talking about that she's been 2 years on and off prednisolone and now on Humira. We're going to talk a little bit about prednisolone. I know when I was on prednisolone, I gained loads and loads of weight, and I found that really difficult, particularly as a woman. I have to say that, my clothes fitted me, and I felt really down. And
hold on.
So, yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, there we go. Sorry, Rhiannon, I jumped in. So Rhiannon's saying she put on 3.5 stone with the steroids and wanted to lose the weight. That is my question. It's so good. Rhiannon, we are on our wavelength, love it. So what she wants to know is it okay to lose weight with a high fibre diet like Slimming Wild? And previously, when I was getting married, I used Weight Watchers, and you're always a little bit, I know what you mean, Rhiannon, you're always a little bit worried about those kind of things because everyone else does it, but you're like, is it okay? So
the first thing is we're talking about steroids that might be kind of tapered off, you're feeling a bit better, and you're stuck with the weight. Is that what
not
you're
necessarily
thinking?
I mean, I was on steroids for quite a long time, like years, because other drugs weren't working for me, and I just got used to being a lot bigger, and you kind of go, oh well, it's New Year, I'll lose a bit of weight, and you're kind of like going, how do I lose weight and still take these steroids because they just make me want to eat everything.
Okay. So if you have put on a bit of weight and your BMI is above the healthy zone, I would say do some very general things such as cut back on foods that are high in sugar, high in fat. Don't do anything dramatic with your diet. One of the things that can really affect our guts is a high fibre diet. So any changes that you make, do them really gradually. And a really good starting point is to keep a food journal, just what you're eating and what symptoms you get. And as I say, start with those extras that get hidden in our diets on a daily basis. So one of the things that steroids do, it makes a snack engrave.
Yeah.
And all the studies show that.
I can feel you all nodding out there. I know you're nodding too.
And all the studies show that you can take in 1,000 calories that way each day. So
I'm just gonna have a cup of wine at that point. I can do 1,000 calories.
So start with general simple things like that. Nothing dramatic, because once we do disrupt our diets and follow something that's a little bit artificial, it may help us with weight loss in the short term, but it may not be that good and helpful for our guts either.
So in terms of like, because I think that you can get into quite bad eating habits with IBD, because at the moment I'm quite thin because I'm flaring, but I have just this ridiculous relationship with my weight that I know most women know exactly what they weigh. I don't, because it just kind of like, it doesn't affect me. So like at the moment, I'm as many calories as I can get into myself. I'm having like scrambled egg with double cream and, you know, all these other things, trying to get calories into me, and then I might get put on, you know, if I get put on steroids tomorrow, you kind of got yourself into this, if you're hungry, eat, you know, because I'm trying to eat, trying to get calories into me, and then you kind of like the pendulum swings, and suddenly eating's a bad thing, you know, you're kind of like, oh my God, now I'm the size of a house because I want to eat everything. And I find it very hard to keep like a healthy middle, to know what.
I think it's really, really difficult, and it's difficult to generalize as well, because everyone's experience with IBD is a bit different. And I think the take-home message there is we've got two sides of the coin. We've got the situation where when we've got a flare, we do need to have more calories, more energy, and eat well. But actually, once things settle, be that with drugs or without drugs, it's about trying to get back to healthy eating.
That equilibrium.
Exactly. Low in processed foods, low in extra snacks and high calorie, sugary things. So the basics of the diet, however, should be similar. So we're having protein a couple of times a day. We've got some source of fruits and vegetables, and we've got some starchy foods, either moderate fibre or a bit lower, you know, if we've got disease activity.
Okay, thank you very much. What's our next one, please, Danielle?
What? Oh, yes, go for it, Chaz.
Thank you,
So we
Chaz.
had a question in from Sophie, which said she's been asked to follow the FODMAP diet, but she's struggled because when she's searched on the web, she's found conflicting information. For example, the research says she shouldn't have apples, but apple juice is present in 90% of squash. And she also wants to know after how long, or how long should you try it for, this diet? Should she try it for months or a year or whatever? And when she goes back to a normal, in quotes, diet, should she reintroduce food back slowly? So there's lots of questions there. Sorry.
Yeah, so is this Sophie from Walker?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what's the FODMAP diet? Who's told her to take it? FODMAP. What? Who said that?
It was in the question.
Her consultant.
Her consultant.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Thank you.
So
her consultant has said so. Right. So should we talk a little bit about the FODMAP diet,
sure.
and then what impact that can have on her?
Okay, so these are types of carbohydrate that are poorly absorbed, and essentially they ferment in our gut. So it actually stands, it's an acronym that stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. So it's a bit of a mouthful.
That's awesome. I think, hit your clapping button on, please. I think that is awesome.
And then one of the researchers came over to the UK and adapted it to the UK diet. And the theory goes that by restricting foods that are rapidly fermented in our guts, that we can somehow reduce our symptoms, reduce our gut symptoms. The original data supported the low FODMAP diet for people with a different condition, with irritable bowel syndrome.
Right.
But we've got lots of studies and papers coming out to show that, in fact, the low FODMAP diet can be quite a useful tool for managing what we call functional symptoms. When we've got, for example, IBD that's quiet in terms of disease activity, but yet we live with other symptoms which can be quite upsetting and challenging. So I think there's a couple of things to pick up there from Sophie's question. A, she was given some information about it, And B, she wants to know for how long to be on it. So the FODMAP diet ideally should be discussed with a dietitian, simply because it's really restrictive. In a nutshell, we're talking about a diet that is very low in gluten type foods, that's free of lactose, and it's extremely specific in terms of fruits and vegetables. It's actually really quite hard to get your head around it. So it should be done with supervision.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if you're chopping something out of your diet and you're not replacing it, then you might be missing out, for example, on calcium. You might be missing out on having enough energy in terms of carbohydrate. The idea is you follow it just for 4 to 6 weeks, and you follow it really strictly. So I think Sophie's point was she was a bit unsure about apple. Apple is the enemy on this diet.
Oh, okay.
As is onion and garlic and lots of other things. It's extremely challenging, and I think if you don't know how to replace those foods in the day, you can get a bit stuck.
Yeah.
So although it's found in lots of things, even gluten-free bread has got apple fibre in it. The dietitian can help you to follow it more easily, and there are lots of different tools that we can use to support the patient, like apps and barcode scanners and things.
Oh wow.
The other point, if you go off and do it, you'll miss out, because the aim of the diet is that it's just a temporary diet. It's just a diet for about 4 to 6 weeks, and then we start the process of re-challenge and reintroduction. And that's this really crucial thing, that when you see a dietitian, in fact, what you can do is advise the patient on a schedule to test systematically, one by one, all the foods that they've not eaten, so that they can work out the connections, make their diet less restrictive. Yeah. So without that follow-up, people are kind of stuck in limbo, and either over time they lose interest in the diet, or they find it just too challenging.
And I think maybe, Sophie, the thing to do is maybe, obviously I don't think you're live at the moment, no. But what, I think maybe go and ask those questions back, maybe give the consultant secretary a call and just say you just like some clarity over that, because it might be that he said that and he's going to actually put in place a dietitian referral as well, and doesn't want you to start on that until the dietitian referrals come through. And sometimes in a busy clinic, maybe the consultant hasn't said that, or maybe actually you need to go and ask the question whether you should be seeing a dietitian, and that's okay to be an expert patient and ask that question. And obviously your consultant knows you better than everyone. Not better than everyone, I don't know why I said that. Your consultant knows you better than we do. We've got a question here from James.
Hi, James.
Do you feel sugar affects the symptoms of IBD? I would love to know the answer to that. Thanks for asking that, James.
Okay, so we find sugar in almost every food that we eat. So sugar in the sense that we get it from carbohydrates. So these are starchy foods. So these are the staples in our diet, and also free sugars. So these are the kind of the sugary snacks and drinks that we might have. We'll ignore that wine there, shall we? So I suppose a really high intake of, say for example, fruit juice or sweets may well affect our gut, may cause diarrhea, and that's because the strength of those sugars can draw in water into our guts. So it's something called the osmolality of the food or the drink that we've had will actually affect our guts, and storing water will lead to those symptoms. So high intake of sugar may do that. That's if we're gulping down.
Because sweets are my flair food.
Yeah. Now
you know that I have seen Lucy in clinic, and basically that is that is my go-to thing. When I cannot eat anything, I can eat a big bag of sweets.
So the point to make there is that we do not ban sugar. Sugar is really important, especially when we need to put weight on. But maybe just having it little and often is the best way forward. Just being a bit careful if you're going to have Coca-Cola or fruit juice.
Yeah, I'm not a big sugary drink person. I like when I flour, I like the masticating. Well, masticating. I like to eat it, and obviously if you have a sugary drink.
Still not as good as Lucy's words.
I know. I'm going to have to pull out the big words here. I'm going to have to pull out my.
you know, some people do report that things like chocolate can affect their gut.
Yeah.
And maybe those fruit gums or the gel sweets are a little bit easier on our gut.
Yeah. I actually once had a consultation with Kathy, and she said to me, I've had 2 bowel resections, so I kind of take Imodium every day. That's part of my life because of the surgeries I've had, whatever the state of my Crohn's. And she said marshmallows, because they're basically got a naturally occurring, and obviously I like sweets, I've got a sweet tooth, and that would reduce the amount of medication I'm taking particularly. So you can imagine if I take a standard amount every day when I flare on very bad. And I love that. And I've like got this little joke that marshmallows are medicinal. But I quite like the idea of
Okay. Yeah, so there is this theory that marshmallows and jelly babies can be a bit blinding. Can be quite useful. Well,
don't take it away from me, Lucy. Take it away.
Do you know what? The most important thing is work.
That was really nice. That was a really nice way of not taking it away. We've got another question. Thank you, Julie, for participating and everyone who has so far. Can people with stomas absorb vitamin tablets easily? And how often should the vitamin levels in our blood be taken if we're not seen by any medics? Great question. Thanks, Julie.
Okay, so the thing is, if we've got a really rapid transit time, so that's just a fancy way of saying if things are going through us quite quickly, and we'll know that because we're having
rapid transit time.
We're having to, for example, empty the stoma bag a bit more often, then potentially anything that we take orally may be poorly absorbed. And I guess people with ileostomies in particular will know that if they're prescribed something called Imodium, the pyramide, and it's, for example, in a capsule form, they may actually see those capsules in their stoma bag, whereas tablets may be better absorbed in the gut and do their job more effectively. So I guess the message there is, if you've got a really high output, it might be worth just checking that you've, for example, got tablets. So you asked about vitamins, I think, looking at the question. So can they absorb, and should vitamin levels in our blood be taken? So there's no reason to suspect that a vitamin supplement wouldn't be absorbed. I guess the exception would be if you've got a really short gut. So we call that short bowel syndrome or intestinal failure. And those patients may have real difficulty with anything that's administered orally. The standard in our clinic in IBD is to measure vitamin and mineral levels annually. Or certainly if there's a deficiency, we'll do it a bit more often. We might leave a 3-month window, for example, with things like folate and fat-soluble vitamins. And there's some evidence and theory that, in fact, some people may benefit from taking multivitamins if they've lost weight or they're underweight, and possibly continue that all year round.
And do you think that, sorry, it's a bit of an offshoot question, but do you think it's good for us to take multivitamins? So I did when I was pregnant, but I've kind of always been a bit worried about doing it, because I was always thinking, oh, well, what if I mess up some other balance or I get too much of something else? You read all this scary stuff. So is a multivitamin okay, or should you only do that under the...
There's a couple of things there. I'd say during pregnancy, it's really important that you do take special vitamin and mineral supplements, and the key nutrients would be folic acid and vitamin D.
Heather, if you're watching,
I
know, I'm sure you are.
So there we go. So that's what I'm saying. In terms of vitamin and mineral supplement, I guess it goes back to what I was saying before. If there's good rationale, so the rationale might be you've had low levels historically of particular nutrients which have been corrected, but there's a chance and a risk that you might become deficient again, then you could take a multivitamin. If your diet is really limited, so we've got people that really struggle even with the basics, so they may be limited to only a few foods, then a multivitamin may be good. And then we're also encouraged to take a vitamin D supplement in autumn and winter. So that would be the time really to do it, because vitamin D can be helpful for our bones. And of course, our patients are at risk of bone thinning, so things like osteopenia and osteoporosis. So there's no harm, but particular groups is what we generally recommend people to do.
Thank you. Okay, so no other questions in the chat at the minute. So what else we got?
Right. Lucy, what are your views on a low refined carbohydrate / sugars diet for people with Crohn's disease?
Okay.
Kind of linked to the previous one, I think.
Yeah, loosely linked. Yeah. So there's a bit of a media buzz about low carb diets.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
So you only have to kind of, log on to the internet and see there are hundreds of articles about these diets. So we're talking about specific carbohydrate diet and the offshoot of that, which is the Paleolithic diet. So these diets.
Oh yes, I've seen that.
Yeah. You may have heard of it.
Paleo, wasn't it?
Like caveman diets.
Yeah.
So we've probably got a little.
We're all
bit...
nodding behind the camera, so you're nodding too.
Some studies have come out of the States, particularly in paediatrics, these small studies to show that the specific carb diet, which essentially is avoidance of grains and fruits and vegetables, but lactose-free milk, for example, fermented milk drinks, can help to maintain remission and in a very small step influence the disease called Crohn's. But these are really small studies. We haven't got any long-term data, and we know that even within these small studies that patients found the diet quite difficult to follow. I think the real danger at the present time is that patients may choose to go on these really drastic extreme diets, and that can have profound results in terms of weight loss and risk of other disturbances. So ketosis is a big risk.
What's that?
So that's when you start to burn fats and produce lots of ketones in your blood, which is a type of metabolic imbalance, and it can lead to dramatic weight loss. I guess my role is essentially to keep a really open mind, and for patients that I see in clinic that are wanting to follow such restricted diets, that depending on their nutritional status, I will support them, but will guide them to make sure it's balanced and they find alternatives for all of the different foods that they're trying to cut.
And that, I think, is just, that kind of almost goes back to my first question about the power of your knowledge, that kind of like, I don't think we've had this much interaction in our lives. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. It just shows how crucial we all know diet is to our disease. And there's another question here about diet, which is coming up in a minute. But I think that we've got this great thing that we can come to you and go, I really want to try this. This is a really, I know this is extreme, but I want to try it, and have that kind of like medically sound conversation, rather than you kind of sat there and you've had the marketing speak, you've had this. And I mean, Lucy is incredibly knowledgeable about IBD. Like I'm sat here and I always learn stuff about IBD when I'm with Lucy. So if you're at Derriford, how would someone get a referral to see you?
If they wanted to see me, they have IBD.
Yes, and you have IBD, and you're in the Derriford surrounding.
Yeah. So anyone in the IBD team, so whether it be the specialist nurses, any of the gastroenterologists, I would say pretty much any person that you meet within Derriford that is in the nursing, doctor, faculty, would be happy to refer to.
Cool. Okay. We've got a couple more. God, you guys are great. So can you tell me if you're on the elemental diet? Previously, she was Kaylee was hospitalised earlier in the year, and an alternative consultant was not a fan of it. So this is another specialist diet.
Yes.
What's an elemental diet?
We see, we're all learning, aren't we?
Okay.
Someone knows. Let's hope someone else knows.
We have is where the amino acids in the proteins are broken right down. So if we think about nutrition in its absolute core basics of nutrition, what we need, then we need fats, we need protein, and we need sugar. And elemental diet, the components of protein are broken down to their essential amino acids, We also have a source of fat. We also have a source of sugar. So it's a complete nutritional supplement. So it's a bit like the supplement drinks we might be familiar with, where we have Frenchie bins and
Sorry, Lucy.
These supplements are different in that, as I say, the protein's broken right down. And elemental diet usually is the go-to when all of our other nutritional supplements or feeds are not tolerated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so is there a reason why this is there kind of like a difference of opinion amongst medical staff, that some people think an elemental diet's good, or some people think it's bad, or some people think you go for it too soon, maybe, from what you've described? Or
I would say, I think what happens is that we've got more evidence to support things like an elemental diet for our paediatric patients than we have our adults, but that isn't to say that it won't be helpful in our adult group. It might just be more difficult to follow.
I find that fascinating though, because Danny, who's behind the camera, she was diagnosed as a child, and you, like anyone who's been diagnosed as a child with Crohn's or colitis, they all have knowledge of the drinks. You've all got knowledge of the drinks, and they all get put on the drink. And I remember, and I was like, what are you talking about? I've never been on the drinks. I have been now, because Lucy's put me on the drinks. And they were like, oh my God, yeah, you're on them for like 6 weeks so you can drink. And I find it interesting, and I'm not sure if you remember it, but we did have a conversation about it, and I said, I think adults would just say no. I think adults would just like, they'd just be like, what? Yeah. I'm not allowed to eat anything. And even though it would be good.
Yeah, I think the point to make is that liquid drinks, so whether it be elemental or other type of drink, like the Ensures, which are polymerics and protein whole, they can be used as a tool or treatment, I should say, for people with Crohn's disease, but not ulcerative colitis. They can be supportive in ulcerative colitis, but they can be used as a treatment in Crohn's disease under special supervision. But it can be really difficult. Can you imagine replacing all of your foods with drink?
Yeah.
And food isn't
and
just...
you're bigger, aren't you, as a grown-up?
Yeah.
Charles is preferring her wine glass. Maybe out.
The nutrients and the sum of the total calories. We miss out on social occasions, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
As soon as we meet with people, it's very often about food. So it really
food is very cultural for us, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know, well, I mean, I think for most cultures it is, but you know, it's like, oh, it's someone's birthday, oh, we're all going out for a meal, or oh, it's a work thing, there'll be a buffet at lunch, you know, and you know what? Oh, you haven't eaten? Oh, I'm keeping you from the buffet. Oh, I won't talk to you anymore, and you're a bit like,
yeah.
But that's a whole new thing about special dietary requirements. But we won't do that today.
I think this point out is that some people really are interested in that approach, so we can support them.
Sorry, that's reading the comments.
That was the case for me. Crohn's
2 weeks.
2 weeks of 12 cartons a day.
Okay.
That is a lot.
So last opportunity, if you've got any questions on here, we'll do the last one or two, depending on how long it takes us to answer.
I don't know if we've covered this already, but I'm newly diagnosed and I've never seen a dietitian. Should I have?
Okay. Maybe this is a question for you, Hannah.
Yeah. Whoa. Should you see a dietitian? I would not be queuing up to do that. In my experience, should you see a specialist IBD dietitian? I would recommend that wholeheartedly. My experience, I'm not like paid advocate or anything. Like, I speak my mind, as you know, and I found that I just completely turn around. I mean, these guys who are on the committee with me will know that when I started seeing Lucy, I kind of like was going, oh no, dietitians are different. And I just think it's a different way. And I think that diet in IBD has quite a bad reputation because like people often mistake it for IBS, and that makes us cross because it's not IBS. I'm not saying I'm not deriding IBS, I'm not deriding IBD. They're just different. They're different. Yes, they affect the same bit of the body, but they are different. And kind of like people always talk about diet as if like, oh well, you know, so and so did this super diet and they were cured overnight, and it just kind of like belittles your suffering a little bit. And I think diet has that. I hope people are nodding going me. I think diet has that reputation, and so that's why kind of I was a bit like, I don't need to see a dietitian. I need the right drugs. I need to raise money for a cure. That's why I'm on the committee. And actually, I had a really great experience. I really understood all these different groups of things that you're talking about. And I never really, like, obviously, yes, I do need medicine and things like that to sort my bowel out and sort my illness out. But actually, there's things that I can be doing in my life that will help me cope with these symptoms and help me minimize those symptoms. And that is not, you know, that's not any reflection on me or my disease, which I think some people think it is if you get sent to a dietitian. So yeah, I would say go and see a dietitian. I think from the questions we've had here tonight, I think that's made me think that an awful lot of people might be quite similar to me and have been quite surprised at the amount of value that have come out of this conversation. Like, people are nodding over here. I can see their faces, I can't see your faces because that would be weird. So yeah, I would say, yeah, go and see a dietitian, go and talk through things, go and find out where you are, how all the different things that have affected you, how you manage your life. Because when you do get newly diagnosed with IBD, you do need to think differently about the decisions you make. You do have to make awkward conversations where you go, yeah, actually, I can't eat that. And that's hard to do because, you know, you're already chuffed that you're out. You know, you're going, yay, I've made it out. Oh no, now I've got to have some conversation. So being able to manage that and knowing those things, I think, is always good. That would be my answer. Long-winded as always. Should we do one more?
Yeah. I've lost weight. Oh, I have actually, but this isn't my question. I'm trying to put it back on as hard. I've noticed Complan in my diet. Is this a good supplement to take, or is this something else?
Okay, so Complan supplement, and there are lots of different supplements out there, but Complan is a kind of a traditional milkshake type drink, and it's not only for people that are kind of with IBD. It can be prescribed for anyone who's lost weight. The fact that you have lost weight might be a sign that actually you benefit from maybe popping along and seeing your GP, who may refer you on to see the dietitian, but it could be a sign that your disease is still active. If you do get to see a dietitian, they may also start with a food first approach to help you to, for example, pick up some more energy and protein from your food, and also tailor the supplements to you. So, for example, if milk isn't your thing, they can suggest alternatives that might be preferable, or if you've had a bad experience with one of the shop bought supplements, they'll give you an alternative. So Complan is perfectly safe. All I would say is, without knowing your history, you might be advised to go and see a healthcare professional just to check the rate of the weight loss and, you know, what can be done to support you to put the weight back on.
Cool. And I would say, obviously, we don't know whether this person has got what they're diagnosed with or any of those things. So from my point of view, as like, it's great to hear Lucy's point of view, I wouldn't take anything like that unless I've spoken to someone on the helpline to make sure, just to check it with my that's just what I would do. I would just be like, I don't know, I'm going to ask someone that knows better than me. So I'm quite careful about those kind of things. So the strangest things you can't do or you shouldn't do, or you could trigger things. So
yeah, and supplements are quite expensive. And how much
that's a good point.
How much should you take if you're just starting them? So yeah, I'd say pop along and see ECWD all the best, and just make sure everything's all right before you go ahead.
Cool, brilliant. Okay, I think we're going to call it a day there.
Yeah, I think so. Great interaction.
Yeah, thank you so much. I can't even remember all the names of everybody. Like Kaylee, Emma, Julie, James, Rhiannon, so many people. Abby, thank you so much, everybody who's joined in. Really, really appreciate it. We're going to be back in 2 months' time. Well, I will probably be back in 2 months' time. Maybe we can drag Lucy along again, because this has been great. Please come along and see us at our pig racing event on the 1st of December. That was a segue there, wasn't it? Please come along and see us at our pig racing event. There's not real pigs, they're wind-up pigs. And that is at the Great Western Railway Social Association, which is Staff Association Club. You know where the spa is in Lara? Take the turning that goes down the hill, and it's there. It's going to be great. We've got loads of support from local businesses. Thank you if you are one of the people who has asked one of our local businesses to sponsor. It's been great. The event is all paid for in advance, so everything we make on the night is going to be profit. Come along. We are a good bunch, and it will be great fun. We are a good bunch. They're all mouth behind the camera tonight, aren't they? So thank you very much indeed for joining in. Really appreciate it. Hope you are well and happy, and we're right here whenever you need us. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.